Alright, so what we got today, this is a, I believe, receiver dryer, I think they're called. Sometimes they're labeled as accumulators. I don't think this one is an accumulator. I think it's just a receiver dryer out of a, I think it was like a 98 GMC SUV, bigger SUV. I don't remember. Anyway, this is a receiver dryer, which is part of the AC system. Let's see. So typically what these do is there's, my understanding anyway, we're going to cut it open and find out, but my understanding of what's going on here is there is a desiccant material down in here that basically serves as like a filter and to suck any residual moisture out of the system. As far as I know, that's about all they do. Feels like aluminum. There's some sort of pressure sensor here. I'm not sure which pressure sensor that would be. I didn't really look at the system real closely. But this was on the this was just before the low side of the AC. I've got a couple of compressors over there. Actually, the compressor off of this vehicle I've got over there will tear apart at some point. May have already done it, depending on when I actually put out this video. And we'll kind of go over how AC works then. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this guy open and take a look at the innards. Body feels like aluminum. Obviously, it's some weldable alloy because it looks like it's been welded there and then at least partially ground smooth around that weld line there. But anyway, I'm just going to go right along this weld line and I'm going to cut it with the hacksaw. And we'll take a look at the innards and see what we got. Okay, so we got her sawn in two. Ugh, sick. Yeah, definitely some sort of desiccant or something in there. So it looks like what we got here is a tube with an orifice. Yeah, there's a little hole in there. You know what, I'm going to cut this screen off. And all this is just aluminum shavings that got in there. Let me get some shop towels. I have a feeling this is going to get messy. All this yellow stuff is UV dye. Which is fairly typical to find in AC systems. A lot of the oils just have it included in it. You just put the UV dye in, that way if you ever have a leak, you get a UV light. Let's see if I can make it a little darker. And you can see this stuff phosphoresces, whatever. It glows when you put a UV light in it. You know, this is just a UV flashlight, ultraviolet. I mean, it's just basically a black light, and it shows up really easily. So this stuff is really, really useful. I mean, I keep a bunch of it on hand because it's cheap. You know, I've got like oil dye, just generic oil dye here that can go in everything. This is for cooling systems. You know, so they make a couple different variants, you know, a couple different flavors for depending on what you're doing. I mean, the oil dye is pretty safe in any, you know, transmissions, oil, anything like that. I probably wouldn't hesitate just to dump it right in the coolant system too. It may just not, you know, dissolve as well as the stuff that's designed to go in water. But this stuff's really cheap. You can order it online. Really handy to have around for troubleshooting and diagnosing. And, you know, these flashlights are dime a dozen. But anyway, get the light back up here. Okay, so this is probably going to be some desiccant pouches. I wonder if it might... Yeah. Wow, that is some tough outer skin. Man, I'm having trouble cutting that. Yeah. So you can see these little pebbles in here. Ugh, it's like fish eggs. Ugh, sick. Yeah, these little pebbles are going to be some sort of desiccant. You don't really know exactly what kind of material this is. I know there's a bunch of different kinds of desiccants out there on the market. I think one of the most basic ones that they use is like calcium chloride, which is, you know, sodium chloride is table salt, but it's just calcium salt basically, which I think you can buy and just throw on your. I think it's also used as like a low temperature driveway salt, like for you know, colder temperature melting type of deal. Because I guess normal salt only works down to a certain temperature. But yeah, so basically that's all that these are. It's just a bunch of desiccant beads. I'm gonna stop squeezing before I get too crazy. Make a big mess here. Alright, so this pressure valve here looks like it's just, get an angle where you can see it. Well, you can see the hole down there. Just measuring the pressure inside this pressure vessel. There was a pressure valve behind the compressor as well, so I don't know if this would be just extra pressure monitoring, or if this is actually like the pressure shutoff for the compressor. Anyway, let's see here. Oh, that's interesting. There's a little orifice down in there. So I suppose this was on the low side. So everything that would be coming into here would be liquid, right? Yeah, everything. This would be just before the expansion orifice and the evaporator. So everything that would be accumulating in this pot theoretically should be liquid coolant. So basically it's just going to trickle up, and I guess it would kind of act as an accumulator a little bit, because I guess, yeah, you'd have the liquid here, it'd be wanting to evaporate. Yeah, so I guess it just kind of acts as a kind of a collection bin right before it goes into the evaporator. Let me see, how can we cut off that screen? So this screen is just going to be there. I guess that's really the extent of the filter. The filtering that this thing does is just going to catch any large particulates, because anything that comes in here, you know, is going to, yeah, so it would come, I guess it would come in from the compressor, or well, from the condenser on this side, go through this tube, yeah, leak out into here, and then it would accumulate in this pot, and then it would come out here, go into the low side, and into the evaporator, into the expansion orifice, and into the evaporator. I think that's how that would work. I don't know, maybe I should have taken some pictures. Well, this is interesting. It looks like, okay, so all the way up in here, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a lip up there. So it is open on top, so anything that makes it all the way to the top would overflow and fill up this bubble. So I guess the theory here is you're going to catch any sediments that settle out. Although it doesn't really seem like that's a great plan, because any bits of metal or anything that come through here are more than likely going to be bigger than that little hole, so they would just eventually work their way up anyway, unless there's a second screen in here or something. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to cut this right here and get this tube off. Maybe I'll cut them both so we can kind of look and see what's going on. Be right back. Alright, so I cut this guy, and yeah, it is indeed just a open tube. You know, it sat up in here like that. Then this guy, yeah, looks like it's just an open tube in there. And this guy, yep, just an open tube in there. I can see the reflection of my glove, the orange reflection, no screen or anything. So yeah, that's it. That's the extent of the filtering that this thing is doing. So that seems like not nearly enough. Interesting. Well, I mean, they say anytime, you know, if you got a compressor that mechanically fails, you're supposed to replace the condenser. Just because in the condenser, you know, it's just like a radiator. You've got all these little coils, and all the bits of metal and everything are supposed to be caught in that and the accumulator, or receiver dryer slash accumulator. All right, hold up a second. So as I was editing the video, I was looking at it thinking, man, what an idiot I am. But beyond that, and how much I hate the sound of my own voice. But anyway, I was thinking about it, and I think I've got the flow of this reversed. So I think what's actually happening is the fluid is coming in here and coming out through this tube, which makes sense because now it's accumulating in this bowl, right? So it's accumulating down in here, and this, if you remember, this guy is hanging out down in the bowl like this, and any vapors that come up off the top are allowed to go in through this funnel and then come out up through the pipe and out through here. I'm fairly certain that that's how that works. That makes a heck of a lot more sense to me than the reverse. Then it would make sense, because I mean, there's no way that that hole wouldn't get plugged, you know, if stuff was going the other way before this screen would. But all right, so I'm fairly certain that that's what's going on. Yeah. All right, back to your normally scheduled whatever was going on before I had this epiphany. I also find it interesting that there's this much desiccant in here. I wouldn't have thought that you would need this much. I mean, basically the only time the system should be exposed to moisture would be initially when you install it. Then after that, I mean, it's a sealed system that's under pressure. So, I mean, everything's trying to get out of the system. So, I don't know. One would think that maybe there's some weird pressure thing going on where you know, you need this much desiccant. I wonder if I'm going to crush one of these beads here, if I can. Get a hard surface to crush it against. My tools are all going to glow in the dark after this. Yeah, whatever that is, it just shattered. It looks kind of white, maybe, on the inside. So yeah, quite possibly some, I don't know, calcium carbonate. I think that's one of the more common desiccant materials. I mean, the thing that's weird about it is it's not kind of in this this crystal form like I'm used to seeing. Like, here's a desiccant dryer, obviously used up. Well, you can vac these things down and reuse them, or put them in the oven and reuse them, but you can see the desiccant in there is more of a crystal type shape. So yeah, I don't know. These might be something different. Also, you know, the oil, I don't know. But anywho, I guess that's the long and the short of it. Thanks for watching. My girlfriend's always asking me what I'm doing out here in the garage. Oh, the horror! That's like a horror movie, isn't it?